As India and Pakistan step back from the brink, tensions between the two regional rivals remain high. Pakistan's Defence Minister tells us about the consequences of war between the two nuclear-armed nations.
The whole world should be worried. We are the two nuclear powers are confronting each other. I think people should be worried about it. We are worried about it. This situation has been imposed on us by India.
With both sides continuing to exchange accusations, will the ceasefire hold? And just how committed is India to a lasting peace?
India is committed to the ceasefire to the extent that there is no further hostility from Pakistan.
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rida Fakhri. Despite a recent ceasefire, tensions between India and Pakistan remain high, with both nations accusing each other of being behind an attack on April 22nd in Indian-administered Kashmir, which caused the deaths of more than 25 civilians. India was quick to blame Pakistan for the attack, which Islamabad has vehemently denied. India and Pakistan's de facto border, known as the Line of Control, is a heavily militarized border that separates both countries, cutting through the volatile region of Kashmir, which remains administered in parts by both Islamabad and New Delhi. On May 7th, India launched its so-called Operation Sindoor, with significant cross-border strikes on Pakistan, followed by retaliatory airstrikes from Islamabad. As tensions flared, India suspended a key water-sharing treaty known as the Indus Waters Treaty, which Pakistan called an act of war. On May 10th, India and Pakistan agreed to a ceasefire, reportedly brokered by the Trump administration. Both sides have claimed victory and presented their own narratives.
We stopped the nuclear conflict. I think it could have been a bad nuclear war. Millions of people could have been killed.
Terrorism will not go unpunished. Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done.
Our eastern neighbour continues a pattern of exploitation, leveling baseless allegations.
We don't support any terrorist entity. We are a victim of terrorism.
So, can the fragile peace hold, and what measures are both sides willing to take to avert another military confrontation? I began by asking Pakistan's Defence Minister Khawaja Asif shortly before the ceasefire was announced.
The whole world should be worried. We are the two nuclear powers are confronting each other. So this is something which was initiated by India, and right at the outset, we suggested that this incident should be internationally investigated. And but India did not respond, and we are still open to the suggestion that there should be an international investigation into what India is saying, and their allegations should be properly examined.
Well, India insists that it is two Pakistan-based extremist groups that are behind the attack in April. How can you be certain that these groups weren't involved in last month's killings?
We don't have any groups. I'll again say that let an international commission be formed, and they should come to Pakistan and see for themselves where are these groups and where are these bases, where are these training camps. It's a hoax, you know. India has exported terrorism to Canada. India has exported terrorism to United States. India is exporting, Modi is exporting terrorism all over the world.
How can you call it a hoax? How can you call it a hoax when you yourself, in recent statements, admitted that Pakistan has indeed funded and supported terrorist groups in the past?
That was in the past. That was in the past. I'll repeat my statement.
When did this end? Because why should other nations take any of your statements today at face value? When did your support for such groups end? Why should anyone take your comments today at face value?
We do not. We were involved with these groups when Americans were here, when US was here, when Europe was here, when NATO was here. Those conflicts are over. We have all these training camps and all this stuff was to support their effort in Afghanistan. I think you should, have a bit of sense of history.
But how can you be certain, Minister,
I
that
am certain. I
any
live in this area.
Pakistan-based
I have a
group
sense of history.
wasn't behind these attacks? And if they weren't, who do you suspect was behind it?
No, absolutely not.
How can you be certain?
I am certain, 100% certain, because I know it.
If it wasn't what the Indians accuse you of, who do you think was behind the attacks of last April?
It was a hoax. It was a false flag to shore up his political support in the elections over there. Why don't they hold an investigation? Why don't they hold an investigation?
Are you saying that India carried it out?
Yes,
Do you have any proof?
No, because then let's settle it. Let's hold an international investigation.
What does India stand to gain?
They're internal. The gains are internal political gains. You know, when the political graph or political dividends are not there, the Indian leaders have been, and you have not responded to my what happened in Canada and what happened in America. There's an international evidence against India.
How is this relevant to what we're talking about today?
It is relevant. It is relevant. Who are you to decide what is relevant and what is not
I'm
relevant?
not. I'm here to ask you questions, Minister.
I have replied to that.
Well, let me ask you this. They
have been exporting terrorism to Canada and United States. These are
That's
facts.
your accusation.
Just go through the archives. Just go through the archives. You'll find the evidence.
Let me ask you about India's accusation. India says that its airstrikes targeted what it called terrorist infrastructure
There is no terror infrastructure.
In Indian-administered Kashmir.
There is no, I deny that. There is no terror infrastructure, and there could be, we offer our territory for investigation. If there is a terror infrastructure, okay, we'll admit that, then you can put us in the dock. But if there is no, then who will be in the dock?
Do you believe there may be resistance movements in Indian-administered Kashmir?
Yeah, over there they have resistance movement. It's an independence movement to achieve the right of self-determination, which was given to them by Security Council in 1948.
So how do you prevent these groups from taking actions?
It is indigenous. We have nothing to do with it.
So they may be behind the attack that we're talking about in April.
I don't think so. No group has claimed the responsibility. This is very common when such things happen. There is always a claimant. There was no claimant. It was a hoax, and it was staged by the Indian government itself.
How important is the whole water issue in this crisis? Pakistan's foreign minister said that India's objective, in fact, in escalating the conflict was to get rid of a treaty, the Indus Waters Treaty, which was signed in 1960 and which was suspended on the 23rd of April by India.
You have to understand the importance of water. It is going to be a very, very precious commodity in coming years and coming decades for the whole world. So this is something, 5 of our rivers, they flow through Kashmir. We entered into an arrangement it was brokered by the World Bank way back in 1960. And that arrangement, there is no clause in that arrangement which defines or which gives the right to any party, us and India, to hold this thing in abeyance. It cannot be terminated. It cannot be held in abeyance. It cannot be, the whole thing cannot be altered unless there is a negotiation and both parties agree to it. So this is the situation as far the Indus Water Treaty is concerned. If India says that we hold it in abeyance, it doesn't mean anything because the treaty doesn't provide for that. So this is a situation. It is an important, very important issue. It's almost the waters. These waters are like a lifeline for Pakistan. So this is something which is extremely serious.
Do you believe
So-
that India will review its decision to suspend this treaty? Because Islamabad said that this for
I'll
Pakistan is an
refrain
act of
from-
war.
I'll refrain from speculating.
What happens if it doesn't? How do you make up for the shortage of water?
That we'll have to see, as the situation takes a final shape or situation is negotiated. We'll have to something which will how things unfold in the future. I can't comment on that. It will be a bit premature on my part.
Finally, Minister, can I ask you about the hate speech that we've been seeing online on both sides? Social media has been rife with nationalistic and anti-India sentiments in Pakistan. What steps do you think are important to take in order to promote a more responsible discourse?
When a country, accuses us of something which is not of our doing, and they start spitting fire against Pakistan social media or official media. It's unfortunate, but how this is how things are.
Khawaja Asif, Pakistan's Defence Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So how will the rhetoric on both sides and the water issue affect any prospects for a lasting peace? Let's take a closer look at the Indus Waters Treaty, which has governed the sharing of water between the two countries since 1960. About 80% of Pakistan's agricultural land depends on the Indus water system. So do most of the country's hydroelectric power plants, serving the country's population of 255 million. The treaty, which was brokered by the World Bank, grants India control over the waters of 3 so-called eastern rivers and Pakistan control over the 3 western rivers. Despite the recent ceasefire, India has refused to restore the agreement, saying it had placed the treaty in, quote, abeyance. So will this lead to another major confrontation between the two nations? And is Delhi using its water treaty with Pakistan as a lever against its neighbour? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Ambassador Rakesh Sood, who was previously in charge of bilateral relations with Pakistan at India's Foreign Ministry. He has also served as Special Envoy for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation. Ambassador Sood, you just heard Pakistan's Defence Minister tell us that India was to blame for the recent military escalation between the two countries and that India was behind the attack in April in Kashmir. We heard India's Defence Minister, meanwhile, say that Operation Sindoor wasn't over yet, despite a ceasefire. How committed is India to the ceasefire?
Well, India is committed to the ceasefire to the extent that there is no further hostility from Pakistan. And as the Prime Minister himself said, that Operation Sindoor marks a shift in our doctrine to deal with cross-border terrorism. What he was at pains to explain was that is the first step of escalation of tensions between the two countries.
He said it was also a new normal, a new phase. What exactly does that mean?
If we just look at the 21st century, we have the attack on the Indian Parliament in December of 2001. Then we had an attack in Mumbai where there were 160 odd people killed belonging to different countries. We've had attacks in a military location in Uri in Kashmir and so on.
It's all very well and good, Ambassador, but where's the evidence? India was very quick to blame Pakistan for the latest attack that took place in Indian-administered Kashmir without presenting a shred of evidence.
Well, the attack was claimed by the Resistance Front, and for the last, about 2 years ago, when the Resistance Front appeared on the scene, as it were, it was clear, and we have given the evidence in the United Nations Security Council, where we asked 2 years ago that the resistance front be put on the proscribed list, because it was nothing but a front for the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the LET, which is already on the proscribed list. In fact, it is
Ambassador,
a very
with
common
respect,
modus.
that does not mean that Pakistan was behind it. Why not allow an international independent investigation? Pakistan has called for one repeatedly.
We have had many such cases. In the case of, I think there was adequate evidence that was collected in 2008 with regard to the Mumbai attack. And I don't see Pakistan having done anything in terms of either having arrested or handed over the people or tried them or jailed them.
Well, Pakistan says it no longer supports any quote-unquote terrorist organizations. Why not disprove Pakistan's claims by
Pakistan
allowing
said
an
that
investigation?
But Pakistan said, General Musharraf said that in 2002 January, when we had mobilized after the attack on Parliament in December 2001. He made a public speech saying that Pakistan will not allow its territory to be used for any terrorist attack anywhere outside. And after that, we have seen a series of attacks. So frankly, patience is wearing thin.
You say patience is running thin, but was India justified in immediately pointing the finger of blame on Pakistan and launching airstrikes?
The airstrikes were launched more than 15 days later. So there was enough time. And then a couple of days later, because people realized that the resistance front had ties to Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is seen as a proxy arm of the Pakistan intelligence, military intelligence, that they backtracked on that.
Pakistan denies these claims, Ambassador, and they have again asked for an international investigation. Why hasn't India presented any facts to back up these claims?
I think that, as I said, we are a little tired of trying to convince the international community about Pakistan's duplicitous behavior on the whole issue of cross-border terrorism. I think when the Americans were in the hot seat in Afghanistan, I think we heard something like, there was a very famous statement by Secretary of State Hillary Clinton who said, well, if you keep snakes in your backyard, what do you expect?
Hold on, but you can't just launch airstrikes because you're simply tired of presenting your own narrative without engaging
in
any investigation.
Hundreds of drone strikes. They actually found Osama bin Laden hiding just about 10 or 15 kilometers away from the Pakistan Military Academy in Abbottabad. What the Prime Minister said was that we have to restore deterrence into the equation. And the whole point of expanding the area of military operations is to restore a degree of deterrence to make the cost of undertaking this kind of misadventure too heavy to bear.
How do you restore deterrence?
We have to be better prepared in terms of intelligence, in terms of surveillance, of not letting our guard down, and so on. So that is deterrence by denial. And the second thing is deterrence by punishment.
And you've done both,
well, we
Ambassador.
Are trying to. I'm sorry.
You have denied Pakistan its access to water resources, as you know, which is a critical lifeline for Pakistanis, certainly a huge percentage of the farmers there. But you've also punished, in your own words, you've punished an entire country, an entire people.
You know, before you can become good friends or good neighbors, you need to become normal neighbors. Right now, I don't think you can restore trust and confidence like by waving a wand or something like that.
Are you being a normal neighbor?
Sorry?
Why has India, Ambassador, kept its decision to suspend the Indus Waters Treaty despite a ceasefire and knowing full well the consequences? Pakistan said it would be an act of war.
Well, the Indus Water Treaty was signed in 1960. At that time, the population of India was 445 million. Today, it is 1.4 billion, and Pakistan had a population of 45 million, and today its population is 250 million.
That still doesn't answer the question. Why has
No,
New
no,
Delhi refused to reverse its decision despite a ceasefire, knowing how critical water is for Pakistan?
over the last 65 years, the ground reality with regard to the Indus waters has changed considerably, as has utilization. There is also a new realization about climate change and its impact. What we have been doing for the last 20 years is trying to discuss with Pakistan various projects that we need to undertake on our side of the border, which are consistent, mind you, consistent with both the letter and the spirit of the Indus Water Treaty. And in turn, what we get is
What you
delaying
have
tactics.
done, what India has done, Ambassador, is not consistent with the letter of this and the spirit of the treaty. As you well know, the treaty has no clause that allows for unilateral withdrawal. In fact, every dispute needs to be resolved by mutual consent.
I'm sorry. 1 year ago, we had given notice that we would like the treaty to be adapted to modern times. We have not received any response to that.
What does it
I mean,
mean to
how
be
do I
adapted to
take
modern
that?
times,
What
Ambassador?
should be
The
the reaction
Pakistani
to
government
that?
has said that it will not tolerate any attempts by India to use water as a weapon. Isn't that what New Delhi is attempting to do here?
We are merely trying to make Pakistan listen. Delaying tactics are not the answer to the various issues that have been taken up at a bilateral level in the framework of the Indus Water Commission. If Pakistan chooses to use only delaying tactics, then I'm afraid there is a cost to it.
And could the cost be a regional war that involves other players as well?
It may surprise your listeners to know that more than 40 to 45% of the water in the three western rivers that flow to Pakistan under the Indus Water Treaty are monsoon fed. And the monsoon rain accounts for 40% of the water in those. Now, Pakistan, it is not as if Pakistan is going to get completely starved or any such thing of water. So it is also a question of better harvesting of water. It is a question of better utilization of water rather than having the water flow.
But just like you have the right to the three rivers in the east, Pakistan has a right to the three rivers in the west.
Yes, the three rivers in the east. Perhaps, again, let me clarify. The three rivers in the east account for something like 15% of the complete Indus water basin. 85% of the water of the Indus water basin goes from the western rivers. The Indus Water Treaty has a provision that India can make use of a limited use of the western rivers, which we have been unable to do because of delaying and obfuscatory tactics adopted by the Pakistani delegations at the Indus Water Commission.
If India retains its current position and is quite adamant in keeping the suspension of this treaty, are you concerned that we could see the first water war in the region? And what would that mean when you have two nuclear-armed powers?
I think that it may be a better idea to advise Pakistan to come to the negotiating table and to respond positively to the various suggestions that have been made with regard to adapting the Indus Water Treaty for the 21st century over the last 3 to 4 years by India.
Finally, Ambassador, I know you led India's disarmament division at the Foreign Ministry for a few years.
For nearly a decade.
Is India being a responsible actor here by, some would say, provoking Pakistan when the consequences are potentially a nuclear war?
We tried very hard, and I think we have succeeded to a great extent in getting an acceptance that India is a responsible nuclear weapons state. The fact that we have maintained a minimum credible deterrent, the fact that we have chosen not to engage in a nuclear arms race, the fact that we have a no first use policy, and the fact that wherever we have retaliated against terror strikes, like the most recent one at Pahalgam, we have tried to focus it on terrorist targets.
Some would dispute this narrative, Ambassador. They would say that India's actions are driving more instability in the region?
These were proportionate strikes, taking into account the heinous manner in which the terrorists had attacked the civilians at Pahalgam. Our fight is neither with the Pakistan military nor with the Pakistani people. But if the Pakistani military chooses to side with the terrorists, then I'm afraid we will have to respond to the Pakistani military. And I think this is a point that the Prime Minister has now made.
Ambassador Rakesh Sood, thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
While the tenuous ceasefire between India and Pakistan offers a temporary respite, the underlying issues remain unresolved. Both nations continue to assert their narratives, and the risk of renewed conflict persists. Lasting peace will require sustained commitment from both sides to address the root causes of their long-standing disputes, including the future of Kashmir and their shared water resources. Now, while the Waters Treaty has survived many conflicts between the two nations in the past, some warn that this latest crisis could herald a new age of water wars. This in a volatile region where the threat of a nuclear war is always, as Pakistan's Defence Minister reminded us, a clear and present danger. That's all from me, Rida Fakhri, and the entire team. Thanks for watching.